Russia controls over 24,000 kilometers of Arctic coastline, more than half the entire region. Beneath that ice lies 30% of the world's undiscovered natural gas and 13% of its undiscovered oil. Moscow has built 13 military bases, deployed nuclear icebreakers, and is spending billions to turn the northern sea route into a global shipping artery that could rival the Suez Canal. But here's what should terrify you. This isn't about opportunity. This is about survival. Russia's Arctic gamble is the last desperate move of a dying empire, a nation betting everything on a frozen wasteland because every other path forward has collapsed. The Arctic zone generates up to 20% of Russia's entire GDP. It produces 80% of the country's natural gas. Moscow has committed to 80 million tons of cargo through the northern sea route annually. They're building 7 new nuclear icebreakers at a cost of billions. But beneath this facade lies catastrophic truth. Russia's Arctic population has collapsed by 27% since 1989. Western sanctions have its flagship LNG projects. The permafrost holding up entire cities is melting, and the entire strategy depends on fossil fuel demand that's about to peak and decline. This isn't expansion. This is Russia's last frontier, the final roll of the dice before economic irrelevance. I'm James Whitfield from Faultline Economics. While others chase headlines, we examine the systems that actually shape history, geography, demographics, and economic fundamentals. Today, we're analyzing Russia's Arctic endgame. This is strategic clarity in a complex world. Let's turn to the strategic map. The Arctic is transforming from frozen wasteland into the world's most contested resource frontier. Climate change is opening sea lanes that were impassable for millennia. And sitting at the center is Russia, with geographic advantages no other nation can match. Russia's claim is rooted in raw geographic dominance. 1/5 of its landmass lies above the Arctic Circle. Its 2.5 million Arctic inhabitants represent nearly half the world's Arctic population. The Soviet Union staked its claim in 1926, creating a legacy Moscow considers non-negotiable. But here's where it gets interesting. The Arctic has become Russia's economic sanctuary, the one region where it can extract resources and generate revenue with insulation from Western pressure. As European markets close and sanctions tighten, Moscow is doubling down on the only economic sphere it completely dominates. The critical question: is this strategy salvation or suicide? Factor 1. The economic lifeblood. The Arctic zone generates between 12 and 20% of Russia's entire GDP. It produces 80% of the country's natural gas and accounts for 22 to 25% of total exports. In 2024, oil and gas revenues funded roughly 30% of Russia's federal budget, a direct link between Arctic extraction and state survival. Russia dominates critical minerals: 43% of global palladium, 31% of diamonds, 11% of platinum. These northern resources are essential for semiconductors, catalytic converters, industrial processes worldwide. But there's a fatal flaw. The region's population has collapsed over 27% between 1989 and 2017. Young, skilled workers are fleeing south. Russia's Arctic strategy is being built on a crumbling demographic foundation, a paradox hidden beneath resource wealth. Factor 2. The LNG gambit. Russia's LNG ambition is centered entirely on the Arctic, led by private producer Novatek. Yamal LNG in 2017 proved the concept worked. The crown jewel was Arctic LNG, 19.8 million tons per year, part of Novatek's goal for 70 million tons by 2030. Western sanctions destroyed this plan. Supply chains are crippled. Foreign partners declared force majeure. The project sits in limbo. Here's what they won't tell you. Europe is decarbonizing and cutting Russian imports. The pivot to Asia means steep discounts. The IEA projects fossil fuel demand peaks by 2030. Russia is racing to monetize assets becoming stranded in real time. The Arctic LNG bet assumes decades of strong demand for the exact commodity the world is phasing out. Factor 3. The Northern Sea Route. The NSR is promoted as Russia's answer to Suez, cutting Yokohama to Rotterdam from 20,000 kilometers to under 9,000 kilometers, saving 40% in time and cost. Climate change enables it. The Arctic warms twice as fast as the global average. The last 18 years saw the 18 lowest sea ice minimums on record. But look closer. Over 84% of NSR cargo in 2024 was Russian oil and gas exports. International transit remains negligible. The NSR isn't a global toll road, it's a private driveway for Russia's own resource projects. If those projects fail due to sanctions or demand collapse, the entire infrastructure investment becomes worthless. If you find this analysis valuable, subscribe to Faultline Economics. We examine the structural forces shaping geopolitics every week with this level of depth. Factor 4. The nuclear icebreaker monopoly. Russia holds an absolute global monopoly on nuclear-powered icebreakers, the critical technology for year-round Arctic navigation. These vessels break through 3 meters of ice with power diesel icebreakers can't match. 4 Arctica-class icebreakers already in service, 3 more coming by 2030. The crown jewel. Project 10510 Lida, class Rossiya. 70,000 tons, the world's most powerful icebreaker. This represents billions in investment and technological capability no competitor can replicate. But here's the vulnerability. Icebreakers are only valuable if there's cargo to escort. The entire fleet's utility depends on Arctic energy projects that sanctions are strangling. Russia built the world's best hammer for breaking ice, but if there's nothing to transport, it's the most expensive tool in history with no purpose. Factor 5. Militarization. Russia's military buildup is creating an Arctic fortress. Since 2012, Moscow has reactivated or built 13 airfields, 10 radar stations, 20 border outposts, bases like Arctic trefoil and northern clover bristle, with 400 air defense, Bastion P anti-ship missiles. The strategy is anti-access area denial, making it prohibitively costly for adversaries to operate near Russian territory. Advanced radars detect stealth aircraft at 600 kilometers. The Northern Fleet submarines use Arctic ice as protective shield for nuclear deterrent. But the military exists to protect economic projects. The bases overlay the Northern Sea Route. The A2AD bubble shields LNG facilities. If those economic projects fail, Russia is spending billions to defend empty tundra. But all of this hinges on one deciding factor. The entire strategy requires sustained fossil fuel demand, successful sanctions circumvention through China, technological solutions to permafrost collapse, and avoiding military conflict. Every assumption is failing simultaneously. Fossil fuel demand is peaking. Chinese firms are pulling back from sanctioned projects. Permafrost melts faster than infrastructure can adapt. Finland and Sweden joining NATO turned the Arctic into a militarized front line. Now, let's connect the dots. What do you think happens when Russia's Arctic strategy collides with peak oil demand and permanent sanctions? Drop your analysis in the comments. We're witnessing early-stage cascade failure. Sanctions crippled Arctic LNG too. Without that, Novatek's 70 million ton goal is impossible. Without LNG exports, NSR cargo targets collapse. Without cargo, the icebreaker fleet has no purpose. Without economic justification, military buildup becomes unsustainable drain. Russia's oil spill response in the Arctic is practically non-existent. The shadow fleet of aging tankers increases disaster risk daily. A single major spill would trigger environmental catastrophe and potentially shut down the entire northern sea route for years. The permafrost crisis adds another layer. Over 50% of Arctic city buildings show structural damage from ground instability. The very ground Russia built on is liquefying, releasing methane that accelerates warming in a vicious feedback loop. For an essential deep dive into Arctic geopolitics, I recommend The New Arctic by Michael Byers, the definitive analysis of how climate change is reshaping this frontier. Check it out with our Audible link below. So what does this mean for the Arctic in 2050? Russia will control vast territory, but lack the population, technology, and capital to exploit it. The Northern Sea Route may be fully navigable, but it will serve Chinese shipping more than Russian exports. Beijing will have leveraged Moscow's desperation to gain permanent Arctic access at discounted prices. NATO's Arctic presence solidifies with Sweden and Finland integrated. The region transforms into a permanent military front line, a new ice curtain dividing east from west. A nuclear-armed state with failing Arctic strategy and shrinking population becomes unpredictable and desperate, the most dangerous combination in geopolitics. The future isn't written, but the blueprint is there for those who know how to read it. Russia's Arctic gamble reveals a nation with no good options, betting its remaining economic strength on melting ice, stranded assets, and irreversible demographic collapse. The Arctic isn't Russia's salvation, it's the final chapter in a long story of decline. Moscow can extract wealth for another decade, perhaps two. But structural forces, climate, demographics, technology, sanctions guarantee this gamble will fail. The only question is how catastrophic that failure will be. The ice is melting. The ground is sinking. The population is fleeing. And Russia is all in on a frontier that's disappearing beneath its feet. If this analysis helped you understand what's really happening, subscribe to Faultline Economics and give this video a like. We're building content like this every week. And as always, stay strategic.